Hello, everyone. Come on in. I'm Jacquie Molloy, and today is the second conversation in our three-part series, How We Are Changed. And as we begin today's session, let's acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands where we are gathering, and you can hold them in your mind, or you might like to write them in the chat. For the Melbourne team of Meaningful Aging Australia, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And we pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the spiritual strength and resilience of Australia's First Peoples and their deep and enduring connection to country, the land, the sky, and the water, and the animals who live there. How We Are Changed. How We Are Changed is a conversation series about grief and loss and trauma. And I'm joined once more this month by Kim Thoday, a seasoned aged care chaplain, as well as a past chaplain with the SA Police, and now also a serving chaplain in the Defence Forces. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacquie. It's great to be here.
Today's topic is anticipatory grief. And I think one of the things that happened in our first conversation was you were able to provide an interesting definition, Kim, for us of spirituality. Another definition, if you like, but one that people really seem to respond very positively to. So I was wondering, to kick us off, firstly, if you could repeat that definition, but also to ask you if you have a good definition for anticipatory grief.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that, and wonderful to have so many people with us today. I'd also like to join you, firstly, too, in your acknowledgement of First Nations, and I'm coming to you from Adelaide, so I'm just wanting to pay honour and respect to our Kaurna people of the Greater Adelaide Plains. So, Jacquie, thank you very much for those two questions. There did seem to be some interest. I think I mentioned last time that I'd developed a model some time ago, but and that was one that has been picked up by Meaningful Aging Australia, and it's published in one of our professional handbooks for introducing a very comprehensive model, actually, of spiritual care, particularly in within residential aged care. So if you have a look online, Meaningful Aging Resources, what I'm talking about is actually published in one of those publications, but or that particular publication. But this is something really, Jacquie, that it's the distillation of a whole life, really. It's taken me a heck of a long time to get there, and I did pay some credit to one of the great 20th century philosophers and theologians, Paul Tillich, for borrowing one of his terms, but using it in this context. And so my definition, what I see is distinctive to spirituality and the discipline, what distinguishes it from other forms of care, is that I see that spiritual care, spirituality, if you like, is that domain, if you like, that it is the sphere of yours and mine. It is the sphere of our ultimate concerns. So those ultimate concerns can be, lifelong ones. But they can also be existential, and they can be a combination of it. It can be and or. And so, the model is expanded to take in a bit of an overarching kind of view of how those ultimate concerns are expressed. So that is part of the model, you see. So there is, there's one aspect of the model which is a more traditional one, which is that for many people, our ultimate concerns are actually expressed through religion or philosophy or a system somehow of values and thoughts. For other people, it is relationally based. It is about connection, actually. So
Yeah.
that forms another part of the model. Another one that I think increasingly we are appreciating is that for some people, those ultimate concerns are expressed through a political activism, for instance, or it could be
Mm,
sport, and for some,
mm.
sport, vocation. For other people, it is an alternative lifestyle,
I love
right?
the expression though, ultimate concerns.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
let's bring that into the discussion for today,
Yeah.
because I feel like anticipatory grief. Well, actually, I'm gazumping you of the
No.
opportunity to
Oh, no, that's all
define
right.
that for us before we start. Actually, yeah, if you have a definition, I suspect you might.
Um, yeah. Look, for me, our yeah, there's a lot of there really are a lot of definitions out there. I think it's for me, anticipatory grief is about a grief that, in a sense, actually occurs before a loss. We
Mm,
talk about grief is a natural response to loss. Anticipatory grief, I think, can be looked at as encompassing an impending loss
mm.
of things that it's often about mortality and death, but it can incorporate many kinds of loss, actually. So it is that sense of anticipating something that is uh, not only unsettling. I think C.S. Lewis put it this way: no one ever told me, he said, no one ever told me that grief felt so like fear.
Oh, wow.
And I think you can
That
use
is that,
other descriptors as well. I'd
yeah.
like to add in, no one ever told me how much grief can feel like guilt,
Mm.
um, or shame, um, or relief, those kind of things. But I particularly like Lewis's idea there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, all of those states that you just mentioned there, starting with his of fear, and you're talking about guilt and shame.
Mm,
Um, you can see how they can be at play in anticipatory grief just as much as after a final loss.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
can't you? Because you can see you may have time afforded to you, say, with someone's diagnosis close to you, and the end is sooner rather than later. You
Yeah.
now have time to not only cherish, but to begin this process of accounting for the life that you've led together, for example, if it was a
Yes.
relation of a partner. And so embedded in that might be fear and shame and guilt, and because you're accounting for everything that's come before. Um, into
Mm,
this final goodbye. Um, how is anticipatory grief though different from, say, worry and anxiety? It feels like we're meaning something different, but I can also see how we in this term we acknowledge that anticipatory grief sounds weightier, right, than,
mm,
than worry. But do we actually know how to work with anticipatory grief in a spiritual care sense.
Yeah, I think there's some. I think there are some aspects that we can bring spiritual and pastoral care into certain aspects, and some of that, is there in the literature, and practitioners talk about some of these things. Let's see if I can have a little bit of a crack at that, because there's a lot in what you're asking. Let me know if I miss anything out here, please. But
Mm.
I think you can talk about conventional grief we think of as in terms of, for instance, the mourning process after somebody has died. Uh, um, we can talk about conventional grief in terms of you're right, the worry, the existential sadness that people feel. Anticipatory um, Anticipatory grief does go a lot deeper, really. It can um, it can be some of these kind of symptoms, I think. For some, feelings of almost terror about the unknown. I come back to Lewis and that idea about fear. I think it involves other emotions like anger about, for some, these are not one size fits all, but
Mm.
people naturally feel a lot of these things with an impending. I mean, the term is weighty, and it is often used around really significant anticipated loss, the death of a loved one, the possible diagnosis of a terminal illness of a child, for instance.
Mm.
Um, some major illness that you have been diagnosed with that may not be terminal, but is going to mean profound loss, and all of the uncertainties that go along with that. It involves other symptoms like bargaining. If only, if only. It's not
Yeah.
to say that some of these symptoms, to some degree, are also part of um, you know conventional kind of grief.
Mm.
As a sense of dread. For some people, they've described anticipatory grief like a never-ending funeral. Isn't that interesting? There's one that just comes
Wow.
to mind, actually. um, like as if um, I've
Yeah.
or I've already actually lost my partner. And many times within the pastoral or spiritual relationship, people have voiced those kinds of concerns. So that now leads me to the final part of your question. So it's a segue into what are some of the important key things that we need to be attentive to in our spiritual and pastoral care. Well, one of them actually is that listening carefully to the narrative piece, and building relationship in order that people have the sacred space, I like to call it.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is that it's a safe space where they can actually say the things that they often won't to family and,
Yeah.
and to other professionals for various reasons, because of, should I really be saying those things? But, it might be along the lines of, well, I feel like my wife, my husband, uh, my whoever the loved one is, I feel like they've already died, or I resent them. That's it's amazing how many times resentment comes up as part of this anticipatory grief. And you know, it's like two sides of the coin. There's the resentment, and then there's slash relief at times. And should I be feeling a sense of relief actually when the stage towards the end point has actually moved along a bit? So
Mm,
there's some interesting
mm,
kind of relief in it all too, from
yeah.
whatever is going on, the exhaustion or those all of that is part of this anticipatory grief.
And I feel like,
Um,
Kim, when you talk about that, I still can't get past that expression, a never-ending funeral,
mhm,
because it makes me think of heartache in general, because I think this is something a lot of people, even if they haven't been in this situation that we're discussing today, everyone's probably had an experience at some point in their
yeah,
life
yeah,
of a broken heart, and how there's such a difference between a conscious state and our subconscious state, whereby you can wake up in tears, like the sadness is already there before you've opened your eyes. So you're literally waking up in tears. And as the day progresses, you kind of bolster yourself up and you get to a point where you've almost reconciled until it happens again the very
yeah,
next day,
yes. Oh,
right?
how
And
true
I
that
can
is.
feel that anticipatory grief might be that kind of cycle, that
Yep.
the the enormity of what is to come, the
Mhm.
enormity of the loss that you can see looming
Yeah,
ahead,
yep, yep.
can't
And
really fully be grasped.
no,
Yeah.
no, that's right. And I'm aware that I'm aware of some who and I like some of the studies that have been done that are using people's actual responses and the data that's been gathered that way, ethically and so on. But I've certainly come across it too. And there's, to put one umbrella statement, you've just reminded me, there is this feeling by some that they are in a state of suspension,
Mm,
actually.
mm,
Um, there's just doesn't seem to be any kind of relief, and this suspension of all sorts of things, particularly around their emotions, and feeling as if I'm just stuck on this endless treadmill.
yeah. Yeah. Um, you talked about some of the literature and how it's capturing now. I just want to give a shout out to Sally Mordyke for
Oh
sending
yes,
a terrific paper through yesterday that she'd written. Um, Sally's here, so hi. So I noticed that she's put
great,
something
Sally.
in the chat
Oh
as
good.
well, that it can also include anticipatory grief, can also include anticipation of loss of other things like
Yes.
relationships, a planned future, health, and so on. And this can naturally lead to worry and concern. Question mark. So that's how is it different from worry and anxiety? Um, but in Sally's case study paper that she sent, she introduced me. You, I know, are already familiar with this, Kim, and that's Warden's 4 tasks of mourning. But I'd like to share them here because
Mm,
I think they also speak to the fact, um, as Warden has determined, that all of these tasks can be revisited. Like it's not a linear state, it's more of a cycle, and also coming back and forth in between certain tasks. Where this is from, Marnie's going to put in the chat the book so that you can
that's
follow
very good.
if you want to know more. But here are the 4 tasks of mourning. 1, accept the loss is a reality. Well, we've just been talking about how that's a difficult one. You're not going to just tick that box and move along. That one's going to come back up again and again. Number 2 is process the pain of grief. And I feel like that's really a good entry point for spiritual care, of helping someone to talk through what it is that they're actually feeling and concerned with. Their ultimate concerns, Kim, their ultimate concerns.
Indeed.
Task number 3, adjust to what the world will be like without the person. And Warden talks about role rehearsal, similar, not the same. Role rehearsal of imagining what it will be like. And then the 4th task, which I feel like doesn't get enough conversation about, and that is find an enduring connection. And I think that's another place where spiritual care can help someone to kind of capture for themselves what it is that they'll always have from that relationship, that will go on, what they've got from that relationship that will go on and continue after death, after a loss. I'm just going to check the chat because, so we've got the Warden book, Grief Counselling and Grief Therapy, a handbook for the mental health practitioner. So that's in there. Jill Gray has put in an easy way to remember Warden's 4 tasks. So if you check the chat, AWAE, acceptance of the loss, working way through grief and pain, adjusting to the world without the person, and creating enduring bonds.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That is excellent. I'd like to, just mention also another practitioner and academic thinker, Susan Duke. I might talk about her way of, and again, it's four concepts she uses that are similar in some ways, and I find have really been very, very helpful. While I think of it, before I just go there, if it's all right, Jackie, one of the comments has been made. I think it was you were mentioning. So who did you mention before? Sorry.
Jill.
Yes, Jill.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jill. Absolutely right in what she is indicating there. Look, it's still this whole discipline really is a work in progress, absolutely. And research is throwing us more and more. It's just painting a more holistic picture all the time. One of the fascinating things that's come out in some of the research is that young people, for instance, have anticipatory, this kind of anticipatory grief as well, sometimes in quite acute ways and different ways to others of us, and it causes us older people like me to think back and go, yeah, actually that's right, because a younger person maybe as a rule has less experience of immediate profound loss like death and so on. It is more conceptual. It's more things are more conceptual, so therefore it is anticipatory. But you would, if we, it's good to pause and remember, isn't it? Remember circumstances and even thoughts when you were much younger. These things can still be existentially really quite acute, and the feelings really quite profound. Yeah. Anyway, there's a whole lot more to say. I mean, people have genuine anticipatory grief around the impending loss of a pet, even if that pet is still is only a few years old, and you know what I'm saying.
I feel you say that, because when you lose beloved pets and animals who you live with, the next crew that come in you're so conscious of the finite time.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
just becomes, I think, as you get older as well, you become both more relaxed about it, but more aware of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to mention something else that I think Lois says, Lois Holtain, we were talking about fear. The Lewis
Ah, yes.
quote, fear is, and she's written, fear is felt in the body with palpitations, fast heart rate, nausea. And it's interesting that you say that, Lois, because one of the things I was thinking when you said, when you gave us that Lewis quote, Kim, was I could feel the adrenaline in my body, like that feeling, that adrenalized state. And it's an awful feeling when it's coupled with sadness, when
Yeah.
you have that feeling of fear, but you know the reason why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah. That's really helpful, Jackie. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I'll just mention again, if I have time, just quickly.
Yes.
Again, Susan Duke. So see how this fits. See how this feels. So she would
Mm,
say one of the symptoms is that there will be in with anticipatory grief. If we are talking about a grief here about something that is going to be, the anticipation is something here that is really profound, a profound loss that is going to really have um, long-term impact and often permanent impact, and one that there's a lot of uncertainty around. So what people feel is one of the feelings she says is that the being with, this is where it's helpful, it's a bit different, the being with the 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 person who we are going to lose, for instance, so, or the pet, right?
mm,
Or
mm,
whatever it might be, that the being with is going to significantly change. And we know that it's not just conceptual because the process has begun in all sorts of ways. So, for instance, the being with a loved one has already changed because our intimacy is changing. Profound loss and um,
mm.
uh, grief and sadness and fear and all of those things. Um, yeah, so and a whole lot of other things. Identity changes. The being with. I was the person's lover. Um, Now I am the person's carer.
Yeah.
Right, to put it
You
bluntly,
know,
that
someone
kind
that
of
you
thing.
both know, Gillian Schultz, who does a lot of work with dementia.
Yeah,
Um, it's a dementia carers program. So it's the people who are looking after those living with dementia. And one of the things that she talks about in dealing with a dementia diagnosis is to maintain the relationship for as
yes,
long as you can.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
But anticipatory grief can push you into worst case scenario and out of your current relationship. And
Yeah.
so that tension, I feel like, is something you're talking about
Yeah,
there,
yeah. So
how that changes. Yeah.
the relationship is changing. So from a spiritual care point of view,
Mm,
as for those of us who have been invited into that space, it's important that we really have our, we're tuning in to be bringing all of the tools that have been given to us, that that we are using in terms of narrative therapy, in terms of deep listening, um, uh, so that people can be actually communicating. Communication is just so important as a
mm,
number one. I mean, it's a bit obvious in some ways, but it can be missed. In other words, that the person's narrative can be told, that they can speak what, in their own words, what is happening. So very quickly moving on to
Mm,
the next one, that we could unpack this further, I know, but so just to say, changes around being with. So there are also, she says, changes around doing experiences. What was how we
mm,
do experiences
yeah,
together changes, roles change. Um, the task now, so tasks have changed all of a sudden. A partner has to give up their work. A partner has to make a whole lot of other, all sorts of, financial changes, work changes, changes to hobbies, so many different things in order, for instance, to become a full-time carer, that kind of thing. Our social connections are beginning to change. Guess what?
yeah.
Suddenly, friends are, why are, where's all our friends? What's going on there, for instance? Yeah, yeah. So
I don't know what to say is the
the
right.
doing, yep,
I don't know what
yep,
to say, so I will withhold. I
yep.
will remove myself.
So a profound thing that people feel, this points up, a profound thing, she says, that happens in anticipatory grief is that people's identities all of a sudden become profound, or maybe not all of a sudden, but it often happens that way. Or yeah, they feel like they get to this point, I don't know who I am anymore. They may not say that, and it can be for the person, it can be for the actual person with the diagnosis, or it can be for the significant other. Spiritual care here again is allowing people to confront those, to actually speak those things, to confront them,
Yeah,
to give our care, to bring our expertise in in a non-assumptive way, in a non-judgment, non-judgment. It's about normalizing. Um, that's one of the things, is permission giving and
mm,
normalizing here
permission giving. Yes.
is coming out in the research. Really, really important, because it
Yeah.
doesn't always happen.
No, and it's we have such a block as a culturally as a society
Yeah,
around discussing death
yeah.
and dying. It makes it that much harder for people to enter into these conversations unless you've got someone like a spiritual carer who can navigate that terrain, who's been there before, who's willing to sit in the difficulty and uncertainty of it.
Mm.
Mm.
I'm just checking, doing a time check.
Oh, we've gone over already.
I know there
We
were.
could just talk forever and a day.
So if you find that, look, because we probably won't have time to finish off on that, but Susan Duke, there, if anyone, you could find that material, I'm sure, an exploration. Her it was about a 2000 article in one of the
How are we
nursing
spelling her
journals.
surname?
Duke, Susan Duke, an Duke, as like in the aristocratic Duke, an exploration of anticipatory grief in the Journal of Advanced Nursing, came out in about 2000. It's still quite groundbreaking. Her two other, I haven't got time to go into them, but the two other domains are that thinking experience changes for people. That's about memories and shared memories, and building a durable personal biography. That's really interesting, that one. Building a durable personal biography for both,
Mm,
if it's between two people,
yeah.
helping people do that. And then her last one is feeling experiences. This is really important. So the thinking experience is more about memories. Feeling experiences, those also change profoundly. And she says here is particularly the domain where spiritual and pastoral care, both of them in thinking experiences, but even more so in feeling experiences, we have an enormous amount to offer in those regards. Anyway, I hope that would be
I mean,
helpful moving forward.
I think it is, and I think given that next month we're going to be talking about how trauma changes us, and
Yeah.
our receptive world. I can see us coming back to some of these domains again, because it's all part of that bigger picture, isn't it? I'm just going to read here a couple of
Yeah, sure.
back. So another one from Sally Mordyke. I think one important thing is to recognize and normalize anticipatory grief, that knowing a significant loss is on the horizon can trigger grief responses, and that this is valid and normal.
Yeah,
And it doesn't mean that the grief won't still be there
that's
and may
right.
intensify after the
Yeah,
loss
yeah,
actually occurs.
yeah.
I I totally agree. I think one of the shadow sides of anticipatory grief is the belief that you have been grieving and therefore you must be done by now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I don't think it works like that.
No, no, no.
And Chris Foote, and I'm just trying to backtrack to where I think this is, Kim, relating to you're talking about Susan Jukes saying that the being with changes. And
Yes, yes.
as written here, that separating in relationships at this time can be both involuntary and by choice to withdraw. That yes, that sometimes yes, there's a choice to step back, to withdraw, to distance, but also that might happen involuntary if there is not a clear ownership or understanding, perhaps, of an anger that we might feel or a resentment or.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that Sally's put a book recommendation in the chat, which is Hope for the Best, Plan for the Rest, 7 keys for
Yes.
navigating a life-changing diagnosis.
Yeah, that's
Thank
good.
you very much.
They're great resources. And I'd just like to finish with this, if it's okay. It's really quick. I think some of the real quick data points, take-home messages. I think is that anticipatory grief. Yep, there's a lot of literature around what is happening, but keep well and truly in mind, and many of the practitioners are saying this, it is actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity actually that can be unlocked. The whole natural the whole natural response really to what's happening is an opportunity actually for people to deal with a whole lot of unfinished business actually.
Yeah.
The important take-home messages I think are for people with anticipatory grief, accept your feelings, give yourself time out from grieving, actually is a useful one. Ramp up self-care. I like that idea. Yep. You can't have enough self-care. Express your emotions. Stay connected.
Yep.
And that might mean
Connection.
developing new connections. And lastly, create some kind of closure with your loved one or with yourself, or if it's you, if you, and it's the person themselves sometimes who, yeah,
Yeah.
it, the, yeah, that actually need to say their goodbyes.
The loss, for a loss that may not be death. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Significant loss. 10 minutes over, we really are going to have to leave it there. But I will say, if you missed our first conversation from last month, Marnie has put in the chat the link, the YouTube link for conversation number 1. So you can copy that link and paste it in to see that. I'm going to say don't necessarily click on it if you don't want to leave right now, because it might take you away. The other thing you can do is register for the 3rd and final conversation in our series, which will take place next month. I'm going to say the 11th of May. No, the 9th of May. Pretty sure that's right. 9th of May. And when you get the replay of today's conversation, all those links will be there as well. Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie.
Honestly,
Great.
you just have so much to share with us. It's just absolutely terrific to have you here. Can't wait for next month.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone's interest and expertise as well. Keep up the great work.
See you.